Morning, morning, everybody. Okay, hi, everybody. So we were talking about what is known as the Ayelet HaShachar, which seems to be what some astronomers call false dawn or zodiacal dawn. Morning. Anyone do any more research?
I did not wake up that early. No,
It's
I
probably
did. I
hard.
just didn't get out.
It's probably hard to see in the city to any kind of pre-dawn light. Okay, so then the Gemara is going to bring a story. We're on Hayamid Bays. Uh, how far down? It's I think it's the eighth line or the seventh line. Dulima. This is a unique Yerushalmi word. It looks like Dilma, but it's not. It's Dulima, which means this is analogous to the following. Or in other words, there's a story that relates this. Rebbe Chia Rabba v'Rebbe Shimon ben Chalafta, the great Rebbe Chia and Rebbe Shimon ben Chalafta havu mahalchin bahada bikas Arbel bakritzta. They were walking in the Arbel Valley or the Arbel Plain in the very, very early stages of the morning. V'ra'u et ayelet hashachar shabaka ora. And they saw the ayelet hashachar, the pre-dawn light. Amar Rebbe Chia Rabba Rebbe Shimon ben Chalafta, Bi Rebbe, Kachu Gulatan Shel Yisrael. He said, Rebbe, that seems to me, that pre-dawn light seems to be a metaphor for the redemption of Israel. But chila kima kima, because initially the geula will come very, very slowly in very, very small incremental stages. Okay, and kol mashi hi holeches irabba v'holeches, and as time goes by, the light increases uh, as time goes on. In other words, all we see is a very, very small amount of light, like the Ayelet HaShachar, and then that light increases gradually until we see sunrise. My taima, um, uh, why is it that way? In other words, what's the source for such a phenomenon? It says in the pasuk in Micha, "Ki eshev b'choshech Hashem orli," that when I sit in the darkness, the golus is like darkness, and God slowly brings us the redemption. That's how redemption will manifest in the same way that it starts in the pre-dawn hours, and then it eventually light becomes greater and greater and greater. Kach batrila, similarly, it says in the story of Esther, or Mordechai Yoshev Bishar Hamelech, that initially the story begins with the redemption of Israel, but we wouldn't know it based on the narrative because something seemingly unrelated to the redemption occurs, that Mordecai was sitting at the gates of the king, minding his own business, and he hears about the assassination attempt that these two men, Bigsan and Seresh, are attempting against the life of Achashverosh. And so this was written down in the Chronicles of the King. Everybody forgot about it. Nobody thought anything about it. Okay? So that's like the Ayelet HaShachar. It's the pre-dawn light, which means that the stage is being set for the eventual emergence of light. It's not the light yet, but it's the pre-dawn light, right? It's this tiny, tiny beginnings. And then later on, we start to see the dawn, where Haman dresses Mordechai according to the edict of the king. This is chapter 6 of the story. And Haman is forced to parade Mordechai around the city, but that's still not the full redemption because the edict is still against the Jews. And And then afterwards, Mordechai returns to the king's gate. And until finally, Mordechai yatzam milifnei hamelech bilvush malchus, that Mordechai emerges from the king after the Haman's attempt to destroy the Jews is foiled. Mordechai emerges with full regalia. And then finally, the Jews have light and they have joy. So literally, the pasuk says they had light. And so the Yerushalmi is saying that that metaphor of light is not coincidental. That's like the sunrise of redemption, right? And it took a long sequence of events. According to the Meforshim, it took years from the beginning, 8 or 9 years from the beginning of the story of Esther until the end. And that's why redemption takes so long. It's a very slow process. And I think we made the point last week that just like Ayelet HaShachar is called false dawn, we get false glimmers that redemption is arriving. They're not false. They're just, it's not yet time. It's the precursor. It's the pre-dawn. Like we say when we say the prayer for the state of Israel, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. It's the first sprouting of our redemption. It's not the redemption yet, but it's the steps that are necessary in order to bring us towards redemption.
I guess we'll never know until it comes. Steps more important.
Yeah, right. But that's everything is in retrospect. Okay, so Va'atya de Rebbe Chanina beRebbe Yehuda.
So you don't use the brackets?
Sorry, which brackets?
You do both the square and I'm just learning. The square.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, well, just like in English. Sorry, I shouldn't say just like in English. I have to verify that. Whenever you find parentheses and brackets, the brackets are the authoritative text, and the parentheses are a variant text.
Okay, so the same as the Bavli.
Yes, same as the Bavli. Va'asya de Rebbe Chia bar Yehuda. So this goes like Rebbe Chanina beRebbe Yehuda. What goes like Rebbe Chanina beRebbe Yehuda? We're going back now to our discussion previously, where we said that there is the distance of 4 mills between dawn and sunrise. How much is 4 mills? 72 minutes, because we said that according to many Meforshim, the time that it takes to walk a mill is 18 minutes, which, by the way, I think most of us could do that a little bit faster. But I guess as we start to slow down, the way we stroll on Shabbos, maybe it would take us 18 minutes. Okay.
We have modern footwear.
What word?
We have modern footwear.
We have modern footwear. Okay. Point well taken. Okay. So who else holds this way? Rebbe Chanina beRebbe Yehuda, the Tani b'Shem Rebbe Yehuda, because he taught a brisa in the name of Rebbe Yehuda that Ovio Shel Rakia. This is a bit of a difficult concept to explain. The thickness of the firmament. The thickness of the firmament. I want you to imagine in medieval astronomy the thinking that really, when you look up at the sky, what you're looking at is a dome. It's a dome that is opaque and that it is studded with lights. Those lights are the stars. And what happens when it's nighttime is that the sun goes outside of the dome. Okay, and it goes outside of the dome. And the reason why we have a period between dawn and sunrise and sunset and nightfall is because that's the period of the time when either the sun is coming into the dome or the sun is leaving the dome. Now, there's a discussion in another Gemara what happens to the sun when it leaves the dome. But let's assume it goes under the planet, okay, under the earth. But when it leaves the dome, every dome has a thickness. you have to have a thickness. So that period between sunset and nightfall is the amount of time that it takes the sun to traverse the thickness of the dome before completely leaving the dome and then going underneath the earth. Okay? So, so if I were to, if I were to draw a picture, it would look something like this. Okay? So you've got this dome.
It's the haze, or what are you looking at the dome?
A dome is a dome. You've been inside of a dome before. Okay? Okay, so this is your dome. Okay? You've got the sun. Okay, you've got the sun. When it's underneath the dome, it illuminates the entire dome and everything that's underneath the dome. Okay? When it's leaving and it's just going outside the dome, it takes time to go from point A to point B, which is the thickness of the dome. That's the reason why you have a period between sunset and nightfall and between dawn and sunrise. It's the time that it takes for the sun to traverse the thickness of the dome. Okay? Now, this was the medieval belief, the ancient belief, was that there is a dome covering our planet. We now understand that that is false science, that that's not real. However, there are many things that are contained within within the Gemara involving astronomy that is based on the conventional wisdom of the time. So whether or not this is real science or not is not relevant to the discussion of how long does it take for twilight, and how long does it take for, we don't call it twilight, but the period between dawn and sunrise. But they're equivalent because the thickness of the dome is constant. So, okay, are you with me so far? Everyone got it? So the thickness of the rakia, that's how they understand the word firmament. That's why the word firmament, rakia, was understood to be a literal thick cover that divides between our planet and the heavens above, because we're covered by a dome. Okay? Now, what does this say about the flatness of the earth? What does this say about a number of other phenomena? Okay, not for now. Okay. Umahala chamishim shana. It takes 50 years for a human being to walk the distance between one edge of the dome to the inner edge of the dome to the outer edge of the dome. And Adam Benoni Mahalech, so why does the math work out? Because Adam Benoni Mahalech Arba'im Mil Bayom. Because the average person can walk 40 mil in a day. Okay, if you were to start walking at the beginning of the day and you were to walk in a straight line due west, you would traverse 40 mil. Okay, and ad shahachama noseres barakia, and until the sun, how long does it take the sun from the time that it enters into the dome at sunrise until it sets and leaves the dome at sunset? Umahale chamishim shana. So sorry, the time that it takes for the sun to go through the thickness of the dome in the morning is 50 years. V'ilu adam mahalech arba'as mil. And so that would be the time it would take for a person to walk 4 mil. So that is 1/10 of the amount of time it takes to walk a full day.
So years.
Hold on. So if a person walks 40 mils in a day, and the time it takes is 4 mil from the time the sun is moving very rapidly. Obviously, it moves much more quickly than a person can walk, right? So what a person could traverse in 50 years, the sun does in the time it takes for a person to walk 4 mills. Okay, so but we're looking at ratios now. If it takes a person a full day to walk 40 mills, and it takes 4 mills to walk between dawn and sunrise, Nimtzeis Omer Sha'ovio Shel Rakia Echad Me'asara Bayom. It turns out that the thickness of the Rakia, or the period between dawn and sunrise and sunset and nightfall, is 1/10 of the day. Because it takes, or actually, traversing just one of those is 1/10 of the day. So now let's try and understand how this astronomical medieval science is working. If you look at footnote number 20, this is brought by the Vilna Gaon in his commentary to the Shulchan Aruch. He quotes this brisa, and then he adds the following words. You see the footnote 20? How long does it take the sun, or how much distance does the sun travel in the course of one day from sunrise to sunset? It travels 500 years, meaning the amount of time that a person, if a person were to walk for 500 years straight, he would traverse that distance. The sun obviously traverses a huge distance, far more than a human being is capable of walking, even within a lifetime. Hainu shebemeshech kol hayom hachama mahaleches merchak shemahale chamesh meos shana uchafishi yotze gam mehemshech habrisa, as is clear from the continuity of this brisa. V'chein bishnos Elio lemishnasenu, and that's the way it appears in another text. Ulefize lashon habrisa mitpareshet baofen acher b'mekzat. B'tchila mivaeret habraita et mahalach adam beinani b'meshech kol hayom. It first explains how long does it take a person to walk if he were to walk an entire day, meaning how much could he traverse, and that's 40 mil. How much distance does the sun traverse? So we're basically looking at ratios. A person walks 40 mil a day. It takes the sun traverses 500 mil a day. So how much distance can a person traverse in the time between dawn and sunrise? 4 mil. And that mahalach hacham b'meshech otuzman 50 mil. And how much distance does the sun traverse between dawn and sunrise? 50. So it's an exact ratio. So the ratio is 40 over 500 is equal to 4 over 50, right? So it's just basically doing basic math. Ulabasof hi mesika shemishnei hacheshbonot, and from these two calculations, yotze sha'ovio shel harakia hu echad me'asara bayom. It turns out that the thickness of the dome is 1/10 of the thickness of the entire distance inside the dome. Okay, okay. Anyway, and so Rash Cirilio explains that it's referring to an average day. So what it turns out is 72 minutes from dawn to sunrise, 72 minutes from sunset to nightfall. That constitutes 2/10 of the entire day. That doesn't seem to be right, because you would have to, if you look at footnote 21, Ulefiza Nimsa, Shahazman Shebein Alot HaShachar Lebein Hanay Tzachana Bein Shchiyat HaChama Lebein Tzeit HaKochavim Hu Asirit Mikol Hayom. You have to say that this is 1/10 of the entire day. Umekeven Shahayom Hu 12 Shaot, נמצא שזמן זהו שעה וחומש, וזה מתאים לסוברים שמהלך מילה 18 דקות, והבראת מילה נעים איפה 72 דקות. He says it works out if you say that it's 72 minutes, the time that it takes to get from from dawn to sunrise and from sunset to nightfall. It will turn out that if you divide the day into 12 parts, each hour will be an hour and a fifth. It will be, so 1 second. An hour is, sorry, a day is 12 hours. If a day is 12 hours, so how does that turn out? That you'd have to say, no, you'd have to say that that's half of each. What the Gemara is saying is that when you say that it takes, you either have to count the day from dawn until sunset, or count the day from sunrise until nightfall in order for this math to work. Because what we're basically saying is that the dome is 1/10 of the entire trajectory of the sun over the course of a day. 72 minutes is an hour and a fifth. So therefore, if there are 12 hours in a day, so 1.25 times 10 is approximately is 12 and a half. So therefore, that's how it's going to work out. Yeah. What did you want to say?
In a day, half a day be 12 hours.
Yeah.
That's
So the math
24.
works out approximately.
one.
No. A day is 12 hours. A day and a night is 24 hours. So a day, meaning the time from the time that the sun comes up until the sun goes down, is 12 hours. So what we're saying is take 1/10 of that, which is either dawn to sunrise, or or sunset to nightfall, and that's 1/10 of 12 hours. Okay, it's 1/10 of 12 hours because it's an hour and a fifth.
If that's an equinox, so it's not always exactly.
Yes, that's when it's an equinox. But that's the bottom line. That's the calculation that the Gemara is trying to make. And the continuation of the Brisa is L'chishem sha'ovyo shel rakia hu ma'alech 50 shana, kach ovyo shel eretz va'ovyo shel tahom mahalach 50 shana. So too, the thickness of the deep and the thickness of the earth is a distance of walking 50 years. Meaning if you were drilled down from the surface of the earth going downwards, you would continue to encounter earth, the terrestrial substance, soil, for the amount of time that it takes, the distance that you can traverse in 50 years, which is, I don't know how much distance that is, but we would have to calculate. It would be, if a person can walk 4 mil in a day, so then that's 365 times that times 50. So if a mil is a kilometer, 365 times 50 is 18,000 kilometers. In other words, the distance from the surface of the earth until you get to the end of soil is 18,000 kilometers going straight down. And then you get to a place called the Tahom, which is the depths, which is described as a watery realm of darkness. And that's a distance further of 18,000 kilometers.
But that's not the diameter of the earth, then. That's to the.
No, it's basically saying that's the diameter of the earth based on the Gemara's knowledge, based on the Gemara's thinking. This is all inaccurate. This is all obviously way off, right? It doesn't, although I should say, what is the diameter of the earth? Okay,
Yes.
okay. Hey Siri, what is the diameter of the planet Earth? 12,000 kilometers. We're not that far off.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But in those days, they thought the earth was flatter, or was it?
But then you keep going. And then below the diameter, or if you keep drilling down beyond the diameter of the Earth, you don't end up in China. You end up in a place called Tahom. You know, end up in a place called Tahom, and Tahom is well,
I say maybe that's in China.
You know, it sounds a home, China.
it's called the depths. Okay, and where do we know that that's the thickness of the Earth and the thickness of the Tahom? Shene'emar, as it says, Hayoshev al chug haaretz, that it says in Isaiah that God dwells on the chug of the earth. What is the chug? Uchetiv v'chug shamayim yitalach. It also says that it probably means the diameter, that God sits on the diameter of the earth, v'chug shamayim yitalach, and God travels across the trajectory of the heavens. Uchetiv b'chuko chug al pnei tahom. That according to his statutes is the chug of the face of the depths. So therefore, chug l'gezerah shava, we apply the word chug for it to mean whatever the distance from the surface of the earth to the end is the equivalent to the trajectory of 50 years travel from one edge of the rakia to the other edge of the rakia. And so they are all equally the same.
53 years ago, I was in yeshiva, Friday night, and Rav Heinemann was asked by one of my classmates in grade 10. He says, how do you know, Rebbe, that the world is round?
Which yeshiva were you
In
in?
Mary Stroll in Baltimore.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and I was 15. Anyway, a bunch of us went from Vancouver. Friday night, it's a special shir with Rav Heinemann, who's a genius,
Yeah.
total genius. And so one guy is 15, he said, Rebbe, how do we could ask anything? He says, how do we know the world is round? So he says, because it says in Yeshaya, Yoshev al chug haaretz. Chug means circumference. He says, if it's a circumference, it must be round. So that's what he said. I never forgot that. This is like, you know, wow.
But you know, the truth is, we don't know what the word chug means, because the word chug, the way that it's explaining now, is there's a distance. You know, God dwells on the chug of the It may not mean the word circumference in the way that we understand it. The way that the Gemara is explaining it now just means that there's a distance that the earth has, there's a distance that the rakia has, and there's a distance that the tahom has. Okay. Okay, but that's interesting that you remember that from 53 years ago. Okay, very nice. Okay, so were you in Baltimore for all 4 years of high school?
Went to Talmud Torah in Vancouver, grade 9, and then I went 10, 11, and 12 for high school, and then I went to YU.
Okay. Okay, so now that we've been talking about this this discussion of the thickness of the rakia is a thickness that it would take 50 years to traverse, which is about 14,000 mil. Okay, so you know, in essence, what it turns out is that if you're taking the diameter of the Earth to be 14,000 mil, then the diameter of the Earth is exactly the same thickness of the dome. It turns out. So the dome is as thick as the planet Earth, according to this explanation.
You talking about the atmosphere, the dome?
The dome is not anything that we know today. Its atmosphere is ethereal. A dome is a dome. It's solid. It's made out of some kind of material that is celestial material, but if you were to take a rocket ship and go straight up, you would eventually hit the rakia and you would crash into the rakia. Just like in the old conception. This was the ancient conception. You would crash into a rakia, you would not be able to traverse
So
it.
that kept the air in, I guess.
Keeps the air in and so forth and so. Okay, we'll hold it here for today.